G'day, it's Rajic here, and welcome to my mod announcement for Lackey and Lord of the Rings, the LCG. But you might say, that's like, it's like an ancient game. Well, you're right, but let's take a look at it anyway.
Much that once was is lost, for none now live who remember it.
Okay, so this is what the mod will look like once it's loaded up in Lackey. And the reason I'm doing this video is because all my Lackey plugins, and there's about 6, there's like Middle Earth, Call of Cthulhu, Death Angel, Doomtown, the original, Dune, all my Lackey plugins all got broken. There's like another 4 or 5 of them. They all got broken when Dropbox changed its stuff. And I finally found what I think is a new solution to host. So I'm going to test it with Lackey for a couple of months. If there's no problems, if it lasts, it seems stable, then I'll move all the rest of my plugins there. But this is my most popular plugin, so we're going to do this one first. So I thought I'd make a brand new announcement, even though I think I made this like 8-9 years ago or whatever, whenever it came out. Okay, so this is what it looks like. I'll try and keep this quick of how to install it, how to set it up, and how to use it. So let's quickly jump straight in. First thing you'll need to do is just go to Board Game Geek and then go to the forum section. And in the forum section, you'll see variants. And in the variant, there'll be Lord of the Rings LCG for Lackey. And that is the thread that has the data. So even if my server changes or if I change where I'm hosting, this is always going to be the same. And somewhere in this thread, because I edit the OP, like the first post, there'll be a how to install and there'll be a couple of links. The first one will load up Lackey itself for where you get the application. So you just go there. And up will come the application download. You've got a Windows version, you've got a Mac version, and you've also got a version on the iStore, which will run on iPad or even large screen phones. So let's just download that and save it to our desktop. Now this will actually also run on Linux using Wine and the Windows version. One's perfectly fine on Linux. Okay, so once it's downloaded, all you need to do is unarchive it to wherever you want. I'm just going to stick it back onto the desktop. And now all we need to do, so this is the directory at unarchived. Now all we need to do is go back to this thread and you'll have copy this link to clipboard. So just right click on that, copy link, and load up the application.
Welcome to Lackey.
Okay, so once this is loaded, just click on the plugin, and this will work same for iOS, and you'll have paste auto update URL. Just click that button, and then click install or update from URL. And that is it. Now, I'm going to speed this up, but it's going to download all the stuff. Now, the way this plugin works is, or the way this application works is, that it will only download what it needs to launch the plugin. As you play the game, it'll load the cards as required. So you don't have to preload every single card in the database, but you can if you want. There's a button that'll allow you to click on it and go download all cards, but you really don't need to do it. Still, this will download everything else, and it takes a little bit of time. Okay, so once it's finished downloading like that, a good idea is just to hit the install update button a second time, and it will just recheck all the checksums and confirm that it's downloaded correctly. If it says all your files already seem up to date, then you're fine. Just click on this installed browse button thing, click on Lord of the Rings, and click choose. And that's it. The application is now loaded up and ready to go. Now I'm going to try and go quickly just so this video isn't like 4 hours long. Now you've obviously got the chat channel because you can play this online with people, and you can actually play online versus, because you log into a Lackey server which means the iPad, the phone, Linux, PC, Mac can all play each other. It doesn't matter what platform you're using. So once it's loaded up, the best idea is just to quickly set some preferences. These are my preferences. You can, of course, choose different things. Preferences, click on Miscellaneous, turn off Tooltips, and turn on Auto Clear Cards when moved off table. This just means that when you take something off the table, it'll actually delete all the tokens from the card. In Performance, I like to click on Superior Image Quality, and I also like to turn off Load Card Images during mouse over in Deck Editor. Now, that's something you can turn on later. Basically, every time you mouse over a card in the Deck Editor with that turned on, it'll download that card, which will mean that you'll have this huge queue of cards downloading, and it can slow everything down. Not using the application, but it just means when you find the card you want to actually read, you have to wait for it to download in the queue. Once you have the whole card database that are downloaded, turn it back on. It's very cool, but just when you first install, I like to have it off. Nothing else really needs to be changed except for appearance. I like to have Make Card Viewer Image Pop Out on Mouse Over off. Now, if you're playing on a small screen like an iPad, you may want that on. And what it means is that it'll sort of the card image will fit to the screen, fit like this. See this card image? It'll sort of fit to whatever size you make this window. But if you've got a tiny screen that's like that, it'll be too hard to read. So if you've got the pop out, you'll mouse over it and it'll pop out large. Anything else we need? I think, and in player profile, you need to set your name. So I'm just going to call myself Tragic and then select an avatar. Now you can put any avatar you want in here. If I go open directory, it just opens a directory of avatars. I happen to have an avatar here that I use, 100 by 100 pixels. Boink, paste that in, and there it is. Chunk. Now I just click save. And now once you have that set up, you don't need the avatar, but once you have that set up, you can then log into the server. And you can see me here, Tragic. Okay, now the other cool thing about this is for people that like to play multiple hands. Basically, this area here from encounter to victory points is your encounter deck, and that's accessible by all players. Then over this side, you actually have your personal deck. Hand, deck, discard, heroes, and removed. And that's sort of unique to you. But if you just click on the test dummy, dunk, I am now got a completely separate deck of hands for playing multiple handed. And I can just right click and go add seat and add as many seats as I like. And they'll pop up like that. So if I wanted to play a 4-player hand solo, I can. Or if I want to play an online with friends, they log into my server and they just sit down at these various seats. So let's have a look. Let's just start a new game. You can only ever have a minimum of 2. And I'll just expand this up so it's easier to see. So how does this actually function? It's not as complicated as it looks, but the application is sort of old. I like to click this little plus button to open out all these buttons down here. And then if you go into the deck editor, you have your standard kind of deck editor. Now it's got a quick search here. So if I type in a test of will, there's the test of will card. All I need to do is drag that, and you saw how it sort of loaded it in straight away. I can just drag that up into the deck, or I can click on it, and down here there's some buttons. Let's add another 2 copies of that. And there you go. And that's how you can build decks in here. You can just type in any kind of name you want. So that's Aragorn. We want Aragorn to go into the hero deck. Now, over here, you have all these different filters. So say the set contains, we want to do Road to Rivendell. So that's RTR. And there we have all the Road to Rivendell. Or say we want to have, where is it? So we want to have willpower and only want willpower of 3. So in the it's in the Road to Rivendell set, there is a 3 will pass that we need to pass, but we only want to have player cards. So let's set type to ally. There you go. So we've got a number of these guys. 3 will, 3 will, 3 will. And that's just from the whole set. Anyway, the point is you can edit the decks in here if you like. But what I would recommend is if you go to Google, the reason why I'm a little rusty on that is because I do it this way. So if you go to Google and type in Zorbeck deck builder, I think it is, that'll find it. There it is. You can find the Lord of the Rings deck builder here. Just click on download, and there's the file, and grab either the French or the English card image data. And that gives you this amazing application, which is probably one of the best deck builders I've ever used. He also makes one for Call of Cthulhu. Unfortunately, he keeps Lord of the Rings updated, but he's not going to do any other LCGs, which is a huge shame. I've been trying to get him to release the source code to me because this is seriously the best deck builder in the history of card games. So you can build your deck in here. So you've got filters. So I say I only have a few extensions. You can tick the ones you want. Change the card pool. You can change the card sorting. I like to go by type, sphere, title. So I've got all the heroes, and I've got all the allies in each sphere and so on. And you've got all these filters. So I say I only want to look at lore events. That's fine. Or say I only want to look at, tactics, ents. Well, there's no ents because I need to add more extensions, and so forth and so forth. And it's very, very simple. You've even got capabilities. So say if I just reset everything, I could go to capabilities and say, what can decrease threat? And it will show you all the player cards that can decrease threat. And this is the deck, so you just add them to the deck. Whatever. The point is, this is a fantastic deck builder, and it exports decks to Lackey. So I can just say, load up Road to Rivendell 5. This is the deck that I used in my latest playthrough in my progression series. You just click the export button, File, Lackey, OK. And we go to the desktop where we, extracted it. You go to Plugins, Lord of the Rings, Decks, and just hit Save. And now in here, I can click Browse, scroll down past all the encounter decks, and just click Choose. And I've loaded up my deck. Now all I need to do is hit the big button that says Load Entire Deck to You. Okay, and there you go. It just loads up. Nice and simple. Now you can see the green up here. It's downloading all the card images. So if I just reveal all, you can see the card images slowly being loaded in. Now, it's that simple. So the heroes have been put in here. You just drag them onto the table, and we're kind of getting ready to start. Now, the other cool thing is if you go to the browse window, you'll see that I've added all these other decks in here, and they've been all had a full stop put at the beginning of the naming, so they kind of are pushed to the top. So all your decks will be below all these decks. And these decks are the encounter decks for the sets. So the naming is pretty simple. Basically, each release gets a number. So the core set is 01, and then it's -1, -2, -3 for the 3 quests in the core set. So Hunt for Golem is the first quest of the second expansion set. Okay, and then you've got POD, that stands for the print on demand custom quests that get released at Gen Con. So that's the Massing of Osgiliath, one of my favorite quests of all time. Then you've got, say, 04 is Khazad-dûm, and so on and so forth. And these are all the, saga expansions and whatever. And if you go down, there is also these .c, which is some custom quests. Now, a lot of these are out of date because a lot of the custom quests I put in when the plugin was first starting to get developed before all the other expansions came out. but I thought I'd leave them in there. They're still cool. And I may consider adding the First Age, that super hardcore expansion that is like basically a complete reskinning of the game in the old First Age setting made by Halls of Boran staff. And also, then there's .E. These are all the same quests again, but the easy mode versions. And finally, then there's .N, and they're the nightmare versions. So let's just load up a quest. Let's load up, how about the Dead Marshes? Click on choose, bam. And you'll note that this time it's loaded the decks into encounter set, quest, and aside. Now there's also another tab called second encounter deck, because there's many quests now that require 2 encounter decks. But basically, it's already set up for you. So all you need to do is, instead of clicking load entire deck to me, because this is being loaded into the communal deck area, you want to load to shared. So just click load to shared, and go back to the deck editor, click the quest deck, load to shared, deck editor, aside, load to shared. And now you'll see that all the encounter cards are in here, and they're all having the card images downloaded. You'll also note that whenever you do that, it clears your hand. So just make sure that you load the encounter deck before you load your player deck. So now I'll just go to player deck, load entire deck to you. Booyah! And that's pretty much it. I can drag out my guys, quests. Just have to wait for these cards to download. Oh, they're popping in now. Drag in the first one. And you'll note that it says there's a tab called aside, because many quests, like this one for example, says search the encounter deck for Golem, add it to the staging area. So basically when there's things being set aside or things like that, I've actually just put them in the aside patch, so it's a bit easier and quicker for people to set up. So you just pull it out like so. And that is pretty much it. So once you've got it set up, what I like to do is let's have a look at these buttons. You've got save 1, load 1, and then save 2, and save 3, and save 4. And you can type anything you want. So I can just type /save name of whatever, and then /load, and the same name will load. And what I like to do, especially when I'm doing deck testing, is once I get it set up like this, I just save it. Now, all I need to do is load in a new deck and just play. And I can just say, oh, well, what if I went in here and I took out one of these and I added one of these, resave it, reload, play. It's so quick to do deck testing that way. But anyway, let's have a quick look at the functions of the plugin. First, we've got the draw 6. And that just loads your starting hand. And say, I don't like that hand. It's actually not a bad hand because it's got Stargazer, Guide, and it's got some attacking and card draw. So that's actually a very good hand. But if you don't want it, click the mulligan. You bam, and you've mulliganed. Now that's a much worse hand. Look at that, 3 of the 1 card. Now there's some other funky little things. Like say she was on the table, we could tap her. There's these buttons here, peak 5, peak 3, and peak 1. So if I want to tap her, I get to look at the top 5 cards. So I do peak 5, and that shows me the top 5 cards of my own deck. Now these are, you can drag them around, drag things to your hand. You've got put to top of deck or bottom of deck. You can put it into different zones, shuffle, don't shuffle, whatever you want to do. Randomly discard, randomly play. There's a lot of little functions that come off those peaks. Now, if you need to look at, say, a value that's not made as a button, you can just right click on the deck and all this information is in the right click. So reveal to owner, top 10. And boom, there's the top 10. So that's pretty much how that all works. I've also done the same thing for scrying the encounter deck 1. So we've got scry 1, we've got scry 3, and we've got scry 5. And of course, you can right click and just reveal, as you like. The other buttons you'll use the most are F1, which refreshes, increases your threat by 1, and draws a card. Now that will refresh all your cards only. So if you're playing with another person, you'll have to do F1 on them as well. So if, say, I had a test dummy, you'd also need to F1 for them. Now, the other one, F2, will change the turn. So look down here, I went to turn 1. That's just for timing. So basically when you're playing, you just go F1, F2, and that'll, set up the new turn. Then there is F3, which will just draw one card, or you can just hit the draw button. And then there is F4, which actually draws the next quest. Okay, so it's just the top run of the bar. And then for the encounter deck, starting with F5, which is, nice break on the keyboard. F5 draws an encounter card from deck 1. F6 draws a shadow card from deck 1. If we had some cards in, let's put some cards in encounter deck 2. You can press F7 to draw from encounter deck 2, and F8 will draw a shadow card from encounter deck 2. Once they're on the table, you can hold down Control and click on a card to flip them over. And that is basically everything. Also, if you right-click on the card, you've got a number of things like take control. Like say, for example, there's some quests where you get allies that become part of your party. Right-click, take control. Now when I do refresh, he'll untap, where before he wouldn't. Now, if you right-click, you've got all these tokens that you can add, as well as things like send to different decks and whatever. So you can add resources, you can add wounds, you can add progress tokens, and I've also added a number of other little tokens just to, you can use for whatever you want, just to make it a little bit easier to distinguish. Now, depending on your screen resolution, these buttons, these tokens might be a little large. If you go to Preferences and go to Appearance, you can set them to whatever you want. So let's set these to 21. And you can see they're all much smaller now. Also, if you go into Preferences, into Key Bindings, you can see a number of key bindings, and you can change these to whatever you want except for empty hand. Leave that as F11 at all times. Otherwise, the mulligan function will break because it actually calls that hotkey to discard cards. Now, one of the problems with this application is that if you hold down Alt and press anything, it'll make an ugly beep noise, which sucks. So I couldn't use Alt in my key bindings, unfortunately, which really annoys me, but that's the way it is. So, and the other thing is, like, say I make resource R, okay? It's going to give me a warning. Now, if I press R now, it'll put a resource on the card that's selected. But the thing is, it's global. So even if I'm typing R in chat, it's going to add resources. So you really need a modifier like Control or Alt or Shift on your hotkeys. If you're playing solo like I do a lot, it won't matter because you're not using the chat anyway. So what I like to do because I play solo is I just make it say R and then Control R. So it'll just be R to add and Control R to remove. And that's pretty much the whole thing. There's also buttons down here if you want to do it button-wise. So if I want to add wounds, if I want to add progress tokens, and I think that's about everything you need to know. So this is Lord of the Rings, and this Lackey plugin, I first released this, I think in 2011 or 2010 or something like that. Pretty close to when it was originally released. So it's still going. The only reason it's stopped is because Dropbox stopped and I couldn't find a way to host it. But now it's up and I am seriously considering building an Arkham Horror version. And I will, assuming that this new server is stable, I will be fixing up my other 6 or 7 Lackey plugins as well. One final thing. there's the server button. If you just click connect to the server, boom, the server loads up. There's currently 45 players at the moment. I'm the only one with the Lord of the Rings Lackey plugin though. But you can join games here, host games, and play with your friends. And that's about it. So I will see you guys next time.